So, welcome Dr. Soumitra Basu for this series of AuroTalks that's being supported by Ministry of Culture, Government of India. And this program has been designed by Sri Aurobindo Center for Advanced Research Trust, Sakar Trust. And first of all, let me express my gratitude to you for submitting a wonderful paper and a very well-researched paper on the inconscious and subconscious in Sri Aurobindo's paradigm and the relation with Jung's and Freud's concepts of the unconscious. Well, it gives a very deep and extensive vision of Sri Aurobindo and the mother's concept of the inconscious and subconscious. You have worked out very elaborately. And of course, you have drawn here and there the links with Jung and Freud. Because I can imagine there are people who have written a lot on Jung and Freud, but not many have written about Sri Aurobindo's inconscious and the subconscious. And especially in this article of yours, what we are happy to see is the mother's dream experience of the inconscious. Because we have read quite many articles describing the inconscious from the point of view of Sri Aurobindo, how he has described in his books and all that. But you have made an extensive use of the mother's dream experience of the inconscious, and a very graphic one that supports this kind of what Sri Aurobindo tells us about his own labor in the God's labor. So I must say it's been a very great eye-opener, the way you have used the mother's dream. What I would like to ask you a few things. Some concepts require clarification, not for myself as much as I'm looking at your article from a reader's point of view or from a listener's point of view, because these interviews will go on YouTube in the coming times, and there will be a larger audience listening to you and about your paper. So before the book comes out in publication, you are spreading word so that our book becomes popular and then your concepts become clearer. So take it in this way. It's not an interview about the paper, but more to make things easier for the listener, the prospective listener of our interview or your article. So I'm requesting you to have some clarifications and giving us some simpler examples, some more explanation, etc. So this is from that angle that I'll be asking a few things regarding your own paper. So once again, welcome Dr. Soumitra Basu. I know you have been very busy, but you have taken out good time to write a very lengthy one, a lengthy article. Now, on the very first page, you have given a beautiful summary about this hard problem of consciousness and how Sri Aurobindo looks at it. And here is a line that I read out from your own writing, where you say unconscious. The term unconscious in the psychological sense was that Sri Aurobindo had to delve deep into the abyss of consciousness, not only to understand the roots of human behavior and the genesis of evil, falsehood, etc., but fundamentally to trace the trajectory of the evolution of consciousness, a task which so long had been outside the ambit of psychology. Do you mean this evolution of consciousness from the involutionary point of view or the evolutionary point of view? I mean, the Sri Aurobindo has traced the involution and evolution both.
From both points of view.
So this was not done in psychology.
No.
Both the views have not been taken. Right. Now, you have given a good sentence here. Evidently, the matrix where evolution is initiated cannot be empty and barren. It must harbor some latent, incipient, or dormant consciousness, at least as a potentiality. Now, how do you conclude this sentence that it cannot be empty and barren? It must have been something latent. What is the logic of it, that where it started, evolution started? There must be something there. Why are you concluding that there must be something?
There must be something there.
Because
you see, this is the hard problem of consciousness research. That the consciousness researchers have said that they have solved many things of consciousness, but one thing they have not been able to solve is how can qualia develop from a matrix which has non-qualia, which has no qualities. So actually only Sri Aurobindo gives that answer. Only Sri Aurobindo gives that answer, that there is what we call non-qualia is an apparent thing. Is an apparent thing. So apparently it looks that it doesn't have qualia, but all the things from the superconscious have come down through the involution and have become embedded there, dormant, waiting to be manifested. So something is there which will be released through evolution, and that is lying dormant, that is lying hidden.
Yeah. So now I get your point, but that's something which I think in the next paragraph you have described as the inconscience. That's something that is there in the inconscience is the beginning of this evolutionary process. Now, in that inconscience, so what is that something that evolves? Is there something that evolves? What is that evolutionary principle or evolutionary material? Can we name it?
It is the superconscious that has come down through involution. As it came down, it became condensed. It became denser, and ultimately it broke into particles.
Achha.
So from where again matter will start forming through evolution.
So basically, it's a superconscious that has gone down in the inconscious itself.
Yes. The superconscious has gone down through the process of involution into the inconscious.
Achha. So that is what you call the subtle poise, is it? Am I right?
The subtle poise.
Yes. Is the end result of the involutionary movement, while its gross poise is the starting point of the evolutionary movement.
Which we can observe. Gross means we can observe that. The evolution, we can observe that. And that subtle poise is what we cannot observe by our ordinary senses.
But this gross point we can observe by our ordinary senses?
Actually, evolution, that evolution actually is happening at one point. After one point, we can observe.
There is a question of after some points, after a particular point. And what is the particular point? Even the subconscious, we cannot observe. So if I say from the inconscient, there is the next stage is what? Of evolution.
Subconscious.
Which also is not visible.
Which is not visible.
So where is the visibility point comes in?
Visibility point comes in when actually after matter manifests.
So the matter is the first visible spot. Yeah, I think you have written somewhere. And so you have said here, evolution being with the inconscient, complete inconscience, and from this inconscient, a subconscious gradually emerges, what you said. This is not a hypothetical construct, but a deep spiritual experiential realization that emerged from a very painstaking probe of the inconscious, which Sri Aurobindo partially hinted at in his famous poem, A God's Labor. And of course, you have written another poem, In the Battle. And in the battle, of course, I'll just quote one or two lines. He does say, I'm full of wounds and the fight is merciless. Around me, the Titan forces press. The world is theirs. They hold its days in fear. Now here, what would be the difference between A God's Labor and this battle? Because as a sonnet is very short, the second one, the A God's Labor is, of course, a long description of his own work. That is very visible there. Whereas I felt this sonnet is more a kind of not an experiential description, but a kind of some kind of, as it says, I'm full of wounds and the fight merciless. Of course, I would prefer always a God's labor, which is really a massively beautiful description. However, that's not the point. But what you brought in is the third point. The mother relived the experience in one of her meditative trances that spontaneously revealed how the inert immobility and the inconscient was a starting point of evolution. That's the most important contribution that you have made in your article, your analysis of the mother's experience. Now, when we come to this mother's experience, we have defined the unconscious in Freudian terms refers to a psychological repertoire of mental contents and the process that lie outside the range of conscious awareness. So I'm just coming to the definition of this unconscious as per Freud. Can you please define that? The unconscious in Freud's language or in Freud's definition.
The unconscious supports the conscious. The unconscious in Freud supports the conscious.
Supports the conscious.
It supports the conscious states. And it is lying beyond the conscious awareness.
But what is it? What's the storehouse of? And the unconscious is, you have written somewhere, it's a storehouse.
It is the storehouse of all the past things. All the past things. So that is the difference because both Freud's unconscious and Jung's collective unconscious speak of the past things.
Acha.
And only Sri Aurobindo considers the inconscious to be to have the capacity for the future. That is totally absent in Freud and Jung. From there, the unconscious is composed of all the past, what has happened that has been dedicated to the unconscious. Or you explain all the contemporary things, but why all the past things that have happened. That is in both in Freud and in Jung. The past matters. So therefore, there cannot be any new thing. You see, this was Japon Sartre brought out this. That Japon Sartre brought out this fact that then you cannot have any explanation for any new event.
Right.
The unborn future. The unborn future is absent in Freud and Jung. And that is what is most important in Sri Aurobindo, the unborn future. And that unborn future, the clue lies in the inconscience.
That unborn future also lies in the inconscient. Can you explain a little more? Because
you see that the mother, when she went down into the inconscience, and it was very difficult for her to go down, because the passage was very narrow with steep, and she was bruised all over, and there was a passage where the consciousness barely could go down, and ultimately when it was very stifling and very very compressing, and at that moment she saw a spring which just came out from the bottom, from the pit of the inconscience, and the spring burst forth with the seeds of the new world. The seeds of the new world, the seeds of the supramental world, which has not yet come out in evolution, which has not yet happened, but which will happen. So that is the unborn future. So that the promise of the unborn future was there in the inconscious when it came out from the spring with its golden particles.
So she sees the supramental world's birth.
And she saw, and she said that it is nothing, it doesn't belong to the past. It is something of the future that I saw. It doesn't belong to the past. So, and she, at the very beginning, she was aware. So while she was seeing it, she was thinking, it came to her that it doesn't belong to the past, it belongs to the future. So the unborn future, the unborn potentialities are all there. So that is the inconscious contains that. Whereas Freud's unconscious, Jung's unconscious contain all the past things.
So in fact, they base the present on the basis of the past. That's why they explain your things, isn't it? When they make analysis of our personality, they connect what we have been in our childhood and in our...
Yes. So that is why this also, Jean-Paul Sartre also said this, that then in Freud's unconscious there is no possibility of erecting something from the future.
Anything of the future. And without that, evolution can't take place. No, that's there. There's one thing that you have written here. This inconscience is as much a material inconscience as a biological inconscience and a psychological inconscience. The Freudian unconscious pertains to the psychological inconscious, which lies just below the conscious mind and had been mainly treated by Sri Aurobindo in the domain of the subconscious. Now, this is what I want to understand, the psychological inconscience. You have written there two things. One is the biological inconscious.
Because the inconscience in Sri Aurobindo, you see, inconscience is a term used by Sri Aurobindo.
Right.
Freud used the word unconscious, which is equivalent to Sri Aurobindo's, what Sri Aurobindo considers the subconscious.
Okay.
But for Freud, it was the unconscious supports the conscious cognitive activities, the conscious mental activities. But for Sri Aurobindo, the inconscious is also simultaneously a vital inconscience, a physical inconscience. So it is a total inconscience. It's not only inconscience of the mind at the level of the mind, it's an inconscience at the level of the vital, at the level of the physical. Therefore, it is also a biological inconscience. Also, it is a physical inconscience. Only the mental inconscience is very resistant, what Mother found out.
That's what I wanted
the
to ask
mental
you.
inconscience is very resistant, and the pattern changes with the mental inconscience, because at first there was the biological inconscience, at first there was the physical inconscience, the mental inconscience came last. But with it, the pattern of inconscience changed. It became very more resistant.
Yeah, because I have read Sri Aurobindo's process, describing the process of involution. Yes, I can understand this consciousness, sliding down and narrowing down and coming to the inconscient. But in this process, I'm not able to see where do this vital inconscience and the mental inconscience and the physical inconscience, where do they come in? I mean, I can imagine the complete lack of consciousness getting to the complete darkness. But these mysteries of vital and the mental, they are more in the process of evolution, isn't it?
Partly,
I'm not able to.
But also during involution also, the vital, physical, they are also all there.
As principles, they are there. So that was a very important thing when you talk about this biological, and the Mother speaks about the mental inconscience. Well, I'll come back to that when I come to the Mother's description. But here you have written a beautiful description of the principle of bliss is the origin of divine love and the raison d'etre of existence. In fact, the secret bliss of existence is the ether of our being, and without which none could breathe or live. Is the potentiality of the bliss principle that propels the inconscious to embark on the course of evolution. Philosophically, I understand this is also referred to in the Vedas, that this bliss principle is the one that really starts off this evolution. Now, here, and from a psychological point of view, can we say the same thing? There is this. I mean, I don't know in psychology how I explain this. In philosophy, we know there is this Ananda principle which is there in the inconscient that starts off the evolution. And in fact, the Vedas, they have a story of one day Brahman gets up, he's all dull and drowsy, and he says, hey, what's happened? Then he realizes that his own spouse, the partner, has left him. And then when Agni and others are sent to find where this Brahman spouse is there, they find her in the inconscient. And then Agni and Varuna and all these people, they go and plead with her, saying that Brahman is waiting for you in the superconscient. Please return to him. Agni arouses the aspect of love in her, that going back to Brahman. So that is the story but it's the same thing. That's the aspect of love returning back to the superconscient is what is this process of evolution begins. But when you say that this potentiality of bliss principle that propels the inconscious, so is it you're talking about the same thing?
Yes.
It's the same principle
Same
of bliss
principle.
or Ananda.
Same principle.
So the Satchidananda element, aspect of Ananda that starts
Yes.
return journey. Yeah. So actually, I'm coming to the very close to philosophy. When we say what is the purpose, what was the reason of this creation or of this universal manifestation? Well, there are many questions that are asked by people. That why, after all, Brahman had to create all this, or this divine had to create this multiple universe. So one of the reasons people are given us is the Leela aspect, the play aspect. But in the play aspect, there is a question of this Ananda, the bliss principle. The whole play aspect is the bliss principle. But then, is that really the reason that we can say philosophically and psychologically that Ananda or the Brahman or the Satchidananda wanted to experience Ananda, therefore he created this world? Can there be this reason given to common man that the divine created or manifested this world because he wanted to experience the Ananda? Would that be a right statement?
Of course, this is a philosophically it is right, but practically to express it to common persons, then it is difficult.
Isn't it?
But ultimately, that is the truth.
That's the truth. Well,
otherwise, what is the explanation of all these phenomena?
Exactly. That's where we get stuck. As you rightly say, it's not easy to explain to the
because
common.
this is a answer which science cannot give, which only philosophy can give, mysticism can give.
That's where we get stuck, because the moment we say, hey, he says, what about my suffering? You see, what are you saying, Mr. Reddy? We are suffering every day. I got a pain here, I got a pain there. So the God is enjoying at my cost. So all kinds of arguments come in. So as I said rightly, philosophically is okay, but psychologically it's not a tenable argument. But I will add here, where I got not satisfied, but my mind got a little, stable when I heard the mother. Mother says, yes, it is a principle of Ananda, but this question of Ananda, there has a difference. She says, when we have the Sat, Chit and Ananda, she says, on that level of the superconscious level, it's a static Ananda. It is not an Ananda that is dynamic. So she says, there's a difference of Ananda experience on the static level of the superconscious, and when Ananda returns to evolution, this Ananda of reunion is different from the Ananda that is there in the initial. So Ananda of reunion is through evolution, the whole principle goes back. So then I understood, my God, this is where this question of Ananda experience through this evolutionary process is greater than the static Ananda which was there in the initial, which is there, always there, but unexpressed. So then I understood, yes, human level also, when two friends meet again after so many years, the joy is there. When we are there together every day, we may not, find out that great bliss and joy. But after many years, we say, hey, yaar, how are you? So that reunion, so then she explains, the Ananda of reunion is greater than the Ananda of existence. So that philosophically also I had to find an answer. And Mother gave a beautiful explanation. So I don't know if that helps in psychology, but this is where I thought, I could exchange something with you. Now, coming to next question. Yeah, you have a very nice, excellent conclusion here. You are drawing this principle of involution. And you wrote, when matter has been permeated by the life energy to an optional extent, the mind principle manifests. Now, my question is, can we apply the same principle for the coming of the supermind? You see, that means I must say that when the mental principle is there manifest to an optional extent, then the supermind will come. Because you said life principle optional, optimum, then mind came. So I can apply the same logic to when there is enough mind, optimum mind, supermind will come. Am I right in that?
Yes, somehow you are right, but the supermind will come in stages, not just the supermind, but before that, other things will also come. Intermediate beings will come. I think the first thing that will be ready when the mind has reached an optimal state is the manifestation of intermediate beings.
Intermediate beings. Intermediate between mind
and supermind.
Acha. Intermediate being, say from which level of the consciousness, or is it?
It is just below the supermind.
Oh, they are also below the supermind. Not necessarily from overmind or intuitive mind.
Yes, from the overmind also it will come. From the overmind, in the last chapter of the first book of Life Divine, Sri Aurobindo has hinted that from the overmind it can come. It can come from the psychic being. It can come from the overmind. Intermediate beings will come from that level.
So now
from within, from above.
Acha. So those are the people who can come after the maximum optimum.
Mind has reached an optimal stage.
Do you think is there anything happening in the present world scenario? Do you open?
The present world scenario is now moving to the point where the intermediate beings will manifest after some time. So I think that the world is moving towards that state.
Is it on the intellectual level or on the devotee level, or what level is the world moving?
That is difficult to tell, but people who are deeply within themselves or above themselves, they will be ready.
These intermediate beings, will they descend or will they be born from our human birth, taking human birth? Or will they descend into a human being as a consciousness?
That is difficult to tell.
But what your principle is there, after an optimal extent, then the new beings will come. Then, as you are saying rightly, that yes, there will be a descent of the intermediate beings. Then why does Sri Aurobindo speak only all the time about after the mind there will be the supermind descent?
And this is enroot the supermind.
Enroot. Right. So now you have taken up the experiential journey into the inconscious by the mother. And that's my first question, which I've already answered in partly, where she said the mental inconscience appeared so resistant that all efforts made no impression on it. So that's what I'm saying. So she comes across in this experience a mental resistance also, a mental inconscience. So then are they all together? Because she was getting into the pure physical material inconscience, or getting into it. She said, but I've come across the mental resistance also, mental inconscience. Which is worse, it was formless. When the mind had not manifested, the inconscience was not like that. It was formless and had the plasticity of formless things. But that plasticity disappeared with the coming of the mental. Now, this is, of course, a beautiful point, but I'm trying to draw a little more that because of this mind, or the resistance of the mind that has come in even in our normal evolutionary process, can it be said that the present violence, the diseases are all because of the minds coming and intervening in the physical level? There's physical diseases, violence, vital violence. Is it the doing of the mind?
Largely, to a large extent. It is the mind which is, with its rigidity, with its resistance, is responsible for all these things.
Because you are a psychologist, I would apply that to the physical ailments and diseases and the mental disorder, mental disability. Of course.
That's why we have these psychosomatic diseases. You see, we have a large plethora of psychosomatic diseases. In fact, in Ayurveda, all illness is you see, it is psychosomatic in that sense.
Acha. No, I mean, can you elaborate a little more on that? I mean, it's a very important point. The mind has brought in all these ailments and all this violence. Say maybe 1,000 years back, the problems were they the same when the intellect was not all that strong as it is now. But the problem is different, but the violence was always there. The physical ailments were always there. Why do we say now there are more? Psychosomatic, what you're saying. Why is it right now?
Because if you see this stress reaction, for example, I will give you the stress reaction. The stress reaction is, suppose you are standing casually and viewing a beautiful scenery, and if a tiger comes and growls, then you have to run for your life.
Yeah.
And to run for your life, your system has to support you.
Right.
You have to have, your blood pressure will increase, your pulse will increase, your blood sugar will increase. All things will be happening to support your running. Your mind will be very high tuned because you don't want to miss an escape route.
Yeah.
And after you come out of the tiger's grasp, then things will become normal.
Right.
But now, the tiger, you see, at that time the tiger came, there were two options: either the tiger will eat you up or you will get out of the tiger's way. But now the tiger doesn't come physically. It's the psychosocial things that come. What are the stressors? The stressors are the psychosocial factors. There is a court case going on. There is a marital discord going on. There is an unemployment issue. There is a loan repayment. And all these things go on. But our system reacts in the same way as it reacted to the tiger. And therefore we have increased blood pressure, we have increased blood sugar. You see, it is more psychosocial things, but our body is reacting in the same way as it reacted to the tiger. And therefore we have the same things. So we suffer from the same illnesses. But at that time, it was not an illness, it was just a reaction, and it came up, all these things were corrected when I came out from the tiger's grasp. But now all these things continue to remain. The psychosocial stresses are chronic, and therefore the reactions to them are also chronic. So in a way, that is how this is the origin of psychosomatic diseases, the psychological factors causing all our somatic diseases.
But why do we blame the mind for that? Because as we have said here, if it's the mind that is brought in.
Because the mind has its complexities, the mind has its rigidities, and the mind doesn't want to, the mind doesn't want to stop. It wants to continue with those things.
So there is this question of mental, inconscious resistance. Rigidity, hardness, narrowness, fixity, opposition came from the mental presence in the creation. I mean, that's a very big statement because rigidity, hardness, narrowness, fixity, opposition came from a mental presence in the creation. This is what the mind has brought into the inconscient.
You see, the mind has ideas. Now, in psychiatry, we are concerned with delusions. Delusion is an idea which is actually wrong and which cannot be corrected by reasoning or by presentation of facts, and which is out of tune with the patient's socio-cultural and educational background. But overvalued ideas, they are not treated as psychiatric problem. You put more value on an idea than that idea should merit. And these overvalued ideas are doing more harm to humanity. Overvalued ideas at the basis of fundamentalism, at the basis of religious, religious leaders. What they say, harp on, overvalued ideas. The terrorists, they harp on overvalued ideas. The politicians, they harp on overvalued ideas. to give more value to an idea, and that is not considered as a psychiatric problem, that is not considered as a delusion, but it does more harm to humanity than what a schizophrenic patient can do with the delusions, because he is left to himself.
Right.
But it's an overvalued idea, an idea that gets more value than what it should merit. That is causing more harm to humanity just now. Of course, I believe now that now it is time for Sri Aurobindo's in education to introduce the Sri Aurobindo's the supracognitive levels. So when one goes to the higher mind, the above our mind, what he has called the higher mind, where all contradictory and complementary ideas have the same value.
Oh, they are the same value.
And they have the same value. At the higher mind, the contradictory and complementary ideas have the same value. So if one, you see, in counseling class, the first day I tell my students is, do you believe that in spite of your differences in religion, in language, in culture, you are the same? And you see, they are all 23-year-old, master's degree. So they all say yes, yes. I say yes. Then in spite of all differences, as you are the same. So in spite of all differences, all ideas have the same value at one plane of consciousness. Unless you go there, you can't be a good counselor. So that is a step towards the higher mind. But now the time has come to take a step towards the higher mind. And you see, all complementary and contradictory ideas have the same value there. So there is no question of overvalued ideas. Otherwise, we can't deal with these overvalued ideas. You see, I tell people that in schools, I tell that if you have a debate competition, take the same student to talk for and against the topic.
Achha.
They said, how is that possible? I said, why not? If a child can be taught nowadays to play chess with oneself, children are taught to play chess with oneself. So why can't one do that? You can train that. You speak for the motion and against the motion. You're the same person speaking for the motion and against the motion. You see, he develops all kinds of views. And these overvalued ideas that is now at the basis of fundamentalism, religious fundamentalism, political fundamentalism, that will go away. Otherwise, it will not go away. The time has now come for the Sri Aurobindo's evolutionary leap.
I get your point. Very, very well explained. Very well explained. And to support you, I'll give you one more example from Sri Aurobindo again. I mean, that's where I'm stuck with this point, and you have put it from the psychological point of view. In one of the writings, when he's commenting on the Upanishads, he says we have lost we do not anymore understand Vedas and Upanishads since the time of the rationalism came into Indian mind. So that hit me. So that means, as you are saying here, the mental consciousness, the inconscious brings in this rigidity. So he mentions in several occasions and several levels that the rationalism has brought in all this, it has negated, rejected all the symbolism, the depth of the Upanishads, Gita and all that. He says the worst are the Indians. We get into rationalism and we forget our own past. And one of the things that Sri Aurobindo has brought back is, as what you rightly said, in understanding a synthesis of all these Upanishads and the true understanding of the Vedas on a higher level, not on the mental, intellectual level. Because it says the mind has always been this culprit. It divides, it takes away the word, it doesn't use, but it comes to the same thing. The sacredness of your text, not only of the text, of your life also. Anything that's sacred in my life, if you become over-rational, you lose the sacredness. So there is the question of the mind, what you are explaining here, is now I can apply to other scenarios in philosophy also. So there is a kind of a negativity about reason, and what you rightly explained, to go beyond reason into the higher mind. And of course, Sri Aurobindo gives us higher levels to go beyond. And so why harmony and unity? Because he has also explained this human unity and all that we talk about, all these things. He says you cannot achieve all this thing being on the mental level. Obviously, mind is there to divide. You cannot achieve. You have to go to the higher level. So now we can come together what you're saying and this a question of the inconscience and what the mother has experienced is where we meet. That means at the higher level. So mind has inconscience has brought in, and then she kind of says she described how the activation of the dormant mind principle made the inconscient aggressive, resistant, and obstinate. So all these things about obstinate, this violence and aggressiveness, and what you have explained in your psychological cases, it's the same mind principle. So we see, as you rightly said, there's an urgent need to go beyond the mind. Otherwise, we cannot survive the present violence and aggressiveness. Yeah, very right. I think I'm happy that I could get something. And now here, you have made a comment here. The mother's experiential description of the inconscience encompassed both the personal unconscious of Freud and the collective unconscious of Jung, but has in addition two more important characteristics. So that's what I wanted to understand. Of course, you have made it clear. Unconscious Freud is individual, personal, and Jung is collective unconscious. But mother's, you have said, is both, has got both. That experiment or experience. How did you come to that both the individual and the collective or both are there?
Because as the mother, as Sri Aurobindo said, the subconscious, you see, the inconscious is not, it doesn't belong to an individual. The inconscious is terrestrial.
It is terrestrial inconscious.
So that, and the subconscious is both individual and universal. At one point, it becomes universal. It is not only individual. At one point, it becomes universal.
The subconscious.
Up to a certain point, it is individual. After that point, it is universal. And therefore, it contains both Freud and Jung. Because the universal, when it links, you see, the Freudian unconscious and the Jungian unconscious, which is called collective consciousness, collective unconscious, that is one part of the cosmic consciousness. That is one part of the cosmic consciousness, one lower part of the cosmic consciousness. If you see in that aspect.
So, but the mother's thing has both.
Mother thing has both, and it encompasses the cosmic consciousness also.
Yeah, you see,
the mother's consciousness goes from the individual to the cosmic consciousness, and to the cosmic consciousness to the full. Not only to the at the bottom, which is the inconscience, and above the inconscience is the place where Jung experimented with, but above to the overmind, which is the superconscient cosmic consciousness. So the mother encompasses both and exceeds both.
Yeah, I can understand that. Now, you see, just to be on a very practical level, say I have my own individual subconscious. Can I say that?
Yes.
But where, at exactly what point am I connected to the universal or the cosmic, as you said? Is there that the individual gets into the roots, into the collective or the universal? I mean,
we are all connected in the world. We are not absolutely individual beings. The individual is only a formation.
Yeah.
But at the bottom, the individual gives away to the universal.
Yeah, exactly. This is where I think I have an image. Like Sri Aurobindo in his philosophy explains the wave and the ocean. Wave is the individual, but the ocean is the collective, is the universal. So we are all like that even in an unconscious level. We are an individual, but we are all rooted in that. Oh, yeah, that makes it clear now. Yeah. And the mother's thing, you have said there are two things. The inconscience is not merely a psychosocial and cultural construct, but equally a material and biological inconscience. The second one The nadir of inconscience carries the seed of the superconscious. And this is where you get entered into a second argument. It's always the same idea that the highest height touches the deepest depth. The universe is like a circle. It is represented by a serpent that bites its own tail. That means that the supreme height touches the most material matter without any intermediary. Yeah, this is a beautiful explanation the mother has given. And you have already explained how Sri Aurobindo's paradigm carries the seeds of the future. That was one of my questions.
You see, the snake eating its own tail is a symbol. How this symbol has graduated? This symbol, mother says, is the symbol of the origin.
Yeah.
Then in Greek literature, this symbol became a symbol of the power, and therefore it was there in the collective unconscious as an archetype. And then, you see, from the collective unconscious, things enter us, and it entered into Kekule, who was trying to figure the benzene ring, and he couldn't figure how the benzene ring would be constructed. Then one day at night he saw a dream of snakes eating its tails. So immediately he got up and he drew the hexagonal structure of benzene. So you see, all these things graduated from that point where mother said that it is in the origin, or the return to the origin, and then in the Greek it became a symbol of power, and so it remained in the collective unconscious as an archetype which you considered as archetypes. And with the archetypal images, they invaded again Kekule and a rational mind, getting an intuitive dream, because his rational mind, when his rational mind couldn't find out any solution, he got an intuitive dream of the snake eating his tail.
This symbol we have in Sri Ramakrishna's this thing. And he has also the same symbol, isn't it? Sri
Yes.
The mutt has the same symbol actually. So that what you said, archetypal image, has come to even on the religious, spiritual level of Sri Ramakrishna. Yeah, that's interesting here. Now here, of course, you have connected very, very well this question of coming in, how you brought in the psychic being. Of course, I've seen your beautiful description of the mother, a mother's dream. But the question of the psychic being you have dealt with is, when you said the question of the permanent, the perfect, what that you have given a description of you have said when you find the golden rule of the perfect, image, that perfect reality or the image is there in the immanence of the human being as the soul spark of the psychic being. Yeah, that image of the psychic, of the perfection, the divinity. You see, when you have written, I don't get your point here. I'll find out. Now the thing is that how is it that the realization of that perfection, of the transcendental perfection, has come into the human being as an individual? That is the soul, the Atman. The point where you say the psychic being, whatever. Now, what is important here that you have brought here? You have said the evolving form arising from the matrix of unconscious needs a fulcrum as a support that is actually to subserve two functions. The fulcrum has to balance the disharmony of the being that arises from the presence of the negative attributes of suffering and ignorance and death from the very beginning. And secondly, the fulcrum has to conceal the inalienable unity of creation carried by the inner spark so as to allow the individual to be unique, assertive and aggressive. And that fulcrum is known as the ego. So what to understand is that in this evolutionary process, there's got to be some point where in the human being, there's got to be something to hold together what you said, the suffering ignorance on one side and the divinity on one side. So in between is coming that ego point, which is really not a balancing factor, but at least the connecting factor as of now. Instead of the psychic being
in the superficial personality, it balances, but it cannot balance properly. It tries to balance, but it cannot balance properly.
Yeah. So that's what I was looking for. The perfect being of the transcendent is represented by the Atman in the human individual. But instead we have this question of the ego. However, a direct link between the perfect being and the imperfect transitional being was never attempted. Consequently, the individual as well as the inconscious from where the individual evolved all became illusory, ephemeral, secondary, and thus worth to be rejected so that one could be liberated from the clutches of imperfection into the purity of supreme perfect being. A world-shunning asceticism thus became a sine qua non of true spirituality. This was a very, very important conclusion why the question of asceticism came in. I mean, Sri Aurobindo has explained many times what you have written. Of course, you have put it in psychological terms, but philosophically also it says the same thing, that the difference between the perfect being above and the perfect being inner is so vast that once these yogis or the rishis, they found that image of the perfect being, they could not tolerate this imperfection of this world. So what you have said is rejecting this world became so natural for them because the difference is too vast. What you have also said, a world-shunning asceticism thus became a sine qua non of the true spirituality. But this is where your beautiful contribution here is that when you said Sri Aurobindo linked them in a unique way in the fourth dimension. He explains that the Jivatman projects a spark in the heart of the inconscious that is the actual support of the evolving being, though it is a veil and the ego develops it as a fulcrum. So what you have contributed is this fourth dimension. Sri Aurobindo has given us this fourth dimension where there could be the connection, where the ancients could not find, so they had to have either or. Either the perfect being there, the transcendental being, or the earth. What we have in our philosophy of Shankaracharya also, because he found the Brahman, he could not tolerate the earth. But Sri Aurobindo's contribution of the psychic being, the fourth dimension, is where the whole connection comes in. And that's why it's very, very beautifully given. And in fact, that becomes quite the essence of Sri Aurobindo's yoga. When we say integral yoga, now I begin to understand it is because of the psychic being, the whole thing can be turned around and accepted, that both the reality of the Brahman and the reality of the world can be accepted just because of this bridge. I think the ancients did not, of course they talked about the immanent divine as Atman, Jivatman and all that. But the psychic being, I think, is a very important contribution for our yoga, isn't it?
Yes.
I think that's where I found my solution also. And of course you have the question of, I think I liked your little twist in the word, but it was a very right word you have used. However, once Sri Aurobindo changed the password of spirituality from liberation to transformation. That was very, very well put actually. He said for traditional Indian spiritual seekers, the goal was the liberation from life, and in such a worldview, the experience of the Jivatman and its unity with the Supreme Self was sufficient, and the awakening of the psychic being was not a dire necessity. However, once Sri Aurobindo changed the password of the spirituality from liberation to transformation, it was imperative for the psychic being to develop itself, realize its oneness with the Jivatman, yet maintain its unique individuality so as to remain the instrument for psychic and spiritual expression and a divine manifestation. That's where you have hit the point. Now the password for spirituality is not liberation, it is transformation. And I can zoom into that single password that you have given. It's the entire integral yoga. Otherwise, I'm reading a lot of this ancient yogas and all that. I mean, there's massive ancient Indian yogas which are very close to Sri Aurobindo, but without this transforming word of the psychic being. I'm saying that Sri Aurobindo has also got the same word as the Tantra, what they have practiced in Tantra Yoga and Vedanta and all that, and Karma. And you see, everywhere we see replicas of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and yoga in ancient times in India. But then where does Sri Aurobindo differ? This question of the psychic being and the psychic transformation, or the role played by the psychic being, that's where the whole difference comes. Otherwise, Sri Aurobindo says my yoga is Vedanta plus Tantra. That's there. But Tantra is there, wonderful. Vedanta is there, wonderful. But they don't speak of the psychic being. That's where the whole thing has come. So when you, as you say in French, en passant, I don't know if you really thought about this word, password, but I like that thing, that is Sri Aurobindo change the password from of spirituality from liberation to transformation. So we have no more the word called liberation, which is not our aim, but transformation. So I said this is a beautiful point which I must recommend and then congratulate you for that. Well, now, Dr. Basu, you have beautifully dealt with inconscience, then you dealt with the psychic being and the mother's dream and all that. Then you came almost to the second section of what you have given what the title tells us about the subconscious. Now, of course, the subconscious itself having a large portion. You have mentioned about submental, subconscious, and the movements in the subconscious, etc., etc. Well, here there are not too many questions because it's much clearer, because there is no comparative note. Of course, you have made some comparisons where Freudian unconscious resembles that part of the subconscious which belongs to the individual domain. Except for a few parallelisms, you are given a very clear idea why subconscious is important for our yoga, and you are drawn from there the subconscious dreams, etc. Well, there even the reader or the listener will understand it clearly. So I do not have many clarifications as such, but I think you have made it clear, because the major questions were in the initial stages, and especially the mother's experiment. So I thought of asking you a few questions there, but in the latter part, I have not pointed out many questions, except that one thing that you have brought out was, of course, you said Sri Aurobindo himself confided that yogis before him had descended up to the vital, and hence the inconscious was not an unexplored continent that needed a Herculean labor to be worked through. So, of course, I mean, you did explain, but descended up to the vital means what? The ancients, yogis descended into the vital, not into the physical inconscious. You see, I don't know if you remember the sentence. You got the point, no? A greater difficulty awaits in the unconscious, which had never been probed before Sri Aurobindo and the mother took the pioneering step to enter its annals. Sri Aurobindo himself confided that yogis before him had descended up to the vital, and hence the inconscious was an unexplored continent that needed a Herculean labor to be worked through. A spiritual illumination, however high, a superconscious power, however great, was not enough to counter the resistance of the superconscious and unconscious, which refused to be changed. However, the question is, what do we mean, or what does Sri Aurobindo mean by the yogis had descended up to the level of the vital? Is it a vital inconscient or the vital plane of consciousness? Now, there are two different things, mental and vital, and the physical, and then the inconscient. So, is there any distinction there, or?
It is difficult to say, because Sri Aurobindo has said that up to the vital, up to what level of vital, but it might be that the full range of the vital.
So they have not gone into the physical inconscient.
They have not gone into the physical inconscient.
And the material inconscient. Yeah, that's where I just wanted a clarification. Here, you have brought in a point that is new, but again, there's one little clarification. The phenomenon of death imparted an element of defeatism that constitutes one of the strongest subconscious impressions and transmits the greatest resistance to change. Because of physical death, the subconscious is defeatist. You see, the subconscious feels that whatever the progress, whatever the effort, it will always end with that, because up until now it has always ended like that. So then the work now being done is to try to bring faith and the certainty of the transformation into the subconscious. This is a thing from the mother. Now the same question I ask you here, because of the physical death, the subconscious is defeatist. I'm sorry to put this same question, but this is from the general point of view. But there has been, all said and done, there has been a physical so-called death in both in Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Physical, material, physical, not on other levels. So is it a kind of a subconscious, is it a kind of a pointing to a defeatist or defeatism, or there's a defeat in the work that they have done?
You see, as they are avatars, their case cannot be compared with what happens with the common people. So, and then Sri Aurobindo's withdrawal was a conscious withdrawal. Mother's withdrawal was a conscious withdrawal. So there are differences between the common deaths and these passing aways.
And then the question is like this, because they also wanted to, as you have put it here, the subconscious, etc., they're trying to transform, as you said. They have not gone through the physical transformation, have they?
They have said mother has said the process of physical transformation, she has set it.
She has?
She has set it.
Set it.
SET set. She has set it.
So the process has begun. Process
has begun. In a way, she constructed the subtle body 1 year before she passed away. And the transformation from the subtle to the gross, anything that happens in the gross body, even any accident that happens in the subtle level before that, we know that. Even, you see, neurophysiology has found out that even before an accident occurs, the brain goes into readiness potential. This has been found out by neurophysiology, that the brain goes into a readiness potential even before an accident happens.
Oh my.
That means in the subtle poise, things happen first. And the gross, afterwards it happens in the gross. So in the subtle poise, mother constructed the subtle body, where she said that she could go and settle at will. She has given a description of the subtle body.
Yes.
But the conditions of the world were not ready for the transfer from the subtle to the gross. So she left it at that. But the presence of the subtle body itself has set in the tune for the physical transformation.
Yes, she does give it.
And you will see the physical transformation has actually, in a way, it has started. I would say, in the divine body, Sri Aurobindo has said that the process of procreation will change, and there are occult ways of changing. But before the occult ways of changing will happen, the science will also change its ways. He has said that. There will be scientific changes before the occult changes happen. And after Sri Aurobindo passed away, this biochemical pregnancy came, and after that, the IVF procedure started.
Yes.
And then Dolly was cloned. from what you call from from a cell which is not connected with the reproductive organs, from a non-reproductive cell.
Yes,
The body was cloned. So all these things are happening, showing that the physical changes are going to happen. And with the increase of IVF and with the increase of adoption, that all these things are, all the things about procreation are changing. So in a subtle way, things are happening.
Yeah. I think maybe to your explanation, what you have explained about the scientific thing, there is one more layer I can see philosophically. When I think, I'm not too sure if Nalnitha said or he wrote somewhere or said somewhere, that I think Nalnitha said that a body that is born of the same physical methodology, that is the usual process, cannot undergo the last step, that is the gross level transition. What you have explained is to the level of the subtle body, it has happened. But a body born of the same factors as of now cannot undergo to the last factor of the gross transition. So that means there's got to be, maybe here science has a role to bring in another methodology, as you rightly said, another methodology, another means of creation. So which would not be the same sexual methodology that we use now. So that body born of a non-sexual methodology has a better chance of transferring from the subtle to the physical, not the gross. So because I was trying to understand how Nalnitha said that, I was trying to applying it to the mother's body and the Shravana's body. And now that they are given over the scientific possibility, I can see the link that the science will create a new body out of a non-sexual arrangement of nature, and that non-sexual born body will have a better chance to transfer the subtle into the gross. So now everything fits together. So thanks for your explanation. And and clarification, Dr. Basu. And I'm very grateful to you. You have a brilliant, I would like to praise you.
I just want to say something about the psychic being.
Tell me.
The psychic being, as mother found out that as mother towards the end, actually she was thinking that the present body, because it has evolved from the inconscious, it contains all the negativities. And the psychic being, as it descended from above, it is intrinsically pure. And towards the end of her life, she came to realize that the psychic being will be the template of the new creation. And I believe her force acts, when one is receptive, her force acts on the psychic being. Her force is always present and powerful, and it acts on the psychic being of persons who come to her. So that is very important, and I think that is mainly the reason why this Dikha or initiation is not needed here in our ashram, the only ashram in the world where there is no initiation of mantra initiation of Dikha, because the mother's force acts on the psychic being. So the psychic being is very important in...
Yes, I remember you have also written in an article, the new template, when she says the psychic itself will manifest as the new physical, as a new body of
the template.
The new template.
The template of the new creation. Because then it will, automatically it will not include all the negativities from the inconscious.
It will not include, and what I think now what I'm saying is also now connected. What Nalnitha said, yes, the drawback of the inconscient, the nature will not be there. The negativity will not be there. There's a new process of birth into which the new... So I think it's becoming very interesting to see. That means the new supramental body will have the substance of the psychic. I mean, the physical body, there has got to be some substance, you see. So the substance of that will be the substance of the psychic being itself, because as she said, when the psychic becomes so large, so that could become the new substance where the new form takes place. I mean, there are many possibilities But yeah, that was the revelation when she said, I've seen that person with a huge psychic being. And as you said rightly, it becomes the new template. Well, yes, there are many possibilities, Dr. Basu, and thank you for your clarification and your very beautiful article. And I'm sure the reader will enjoy this. You have dealt at length Sri Aurobindo's philosophy. And okay, Freud and Jung, of course, the world knows too much, but we didn't know a lot about Sri Aurobindo's views. And you have an excellent grip of the whole situation, and I'm grateful to you for enlightening us with a lovely article. And I'm sure your readers will thoroughly enjoy. And then Sakar Trust would be, we'll have the gratitude of people for publishing your beautiful articles. Thank you, Soumitra. Thanks a lot. See you again for some time. Bye-bye.